And most weeks we do have reasonably good news to talk to you about. But today we're also going to be talking about one of the really big problems, because we're approaching the end of November and it's now been something like 23 to 25 days, 23 to 25 consecutive days, where the people of northern India, the NCR, Delhi, Uttar Pradesh, Haryana, Bihar, have been breathing air that, quite frankly, isn't air that they should have been breathing even for 1 minute. And they've been breathing it for 20 to 23 consecutive days. Why is it happening? Why can't we fix the problem? And is it really damaging your health, or is it not? We're going to be taking a look at that, and we're also going to get one of the top pulmonologists in India to talk about the impact of all of this for the health of people in northern India. We're also going to be taking a look at a major development that has just taken place in higher education, where the UGC has come out with guidelines where foreign universities can now come and set up campus right here in India. So you don't need to go to Canada or the US or the UK to get high quality education. You could attend the campus of a Harvard or Oxford or a Johns Hopkins or a Southampton University right here in India. What does that mean? The chairman of UGC is going to be joining us to explain the regulations, and other experts will be telling us how it can best be implemented. And last but by no means the least, we have a very special guest for you. Our eminent comedian, Vir Das, fresh from getting an Emmy award, a moment of great pride for India, and Vir Das is going to be joining us right here on The India Story. But before I go to any of those special guests, let's quickly bring you up to date with the big headlines from India that you should be tracking.
The Ministry of Foreign Affairs responded to media reports indicating that the US thwarted a plan to assassinate Khalistani leader Gurpatwant Singh Pannu on American soil and raised the matter with India. The ministry emphasized that India takes inputs on security matters from the US seriously, since they impinge on its own national security concerns as well. The statement further disclosed that the US shared information regarding the nexus involving organized criminals, gun runners, terrorists and others. The MEA said that it is currently examining the matter. India has resumed electronic visa services for Canadian nationals after nearly a 2-month pause. The move to restore e-visa services is a significant step towards mending relations between the two countries after tensions flared between India and Canada in September following Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's allegations on the potential involvement of Indian agents in the killing of Khalistani extremist Hardeep Singh Nijjar. India rejected Trudeau's allegations as absurd and motivated. Days later, New Delhi announced it was temporarily suspending the issuance of visas to Canadian citizens. The Enforcement Directorate has attached assets worth 751.9 crore rupees as part of its money laundering investigation against the Congress party promoted Young Indian. The firm owns the National Herald newspaper, and the ED had earlier questioned and recorded statements of Congress leaders Sonia Gandhi and Rahul Gandhi. In a statement, the probe agency said its investigation revealed that the company has immovable properties which it said were proceeds of crime. Responding to the ED announcement, Congress targeted the BJP, saying it reflects their desperation to divert attention from certain defeat in the ongoing elections in each state. Asian champion Qatar ended India's 15-game unbeaten streak with a commanding 3-0 win in the FIFA World Cup 2026 qualifiers in Bhubaneswar this week. Despite this, India remains in contention to secure the second spot in Group A and qualify for the third round for the first time. To secure a spot in the FIFA World Cup, India needs to reclaim the second spot in the points table. The Blue Tigers next play their 2026 World Cup qualifiers match against Tajikistan on March 21st next year.
Well, let me start by talking about something that should be much, much higher on the priority list for the India story. Now, over the past few weeks, I've met foreign tourists in India, foreign investors in India, and many foreign diplomats as well, and they've all expressed wonder and surprise, perhaps even amazement at how fast development is actually taking place. The roads, the expressways, the signs of rising prosperity all around us. But equally, all of them have also expressed shock at the levels of air pollution, not just in Delhi, but across northern India. And many of them have wondered why people are accepting this calmly. Levels of 400 and more in city after city, day after day, week after week. And the answer, quite frankly, the only answer I can think of is the frog in the boiling water story. You know that story. You know, if you throw a frog into boiling water, it will jump out. But if you keep the frog in the water and keep heating it slowly, that frog will boil to death. Well, the water is boiling in North India, and all of us are the frogs who are just sitting there, doing nothing. Look, I began by saying that the toxic smoke in North India damages the India story and the image of India in the world. Well, yes, it does, but that's not the reason why we should panic. The reason we should panic is because there are 300 million people potentially sitting in a toxic gas chamber with consequences and long-term consequences that we can only imagine. Now, I've spent 10 years now talking every single year at this time and earlier about the ravages of air pollution. And I've often wondered why there's so much apathy, why nothing gets done. And frankly, I don't have an answer. Hey, this is a country that has more or less ended open defecation in just a few short years with the Swachh Bharat mission. We have solved the infrastructure crisis in areas like telecom and power and airports and roads and ports. We've built some of the finest digital infrastructure in the world. We've even landed on the moon. And crucially and interestingly, we are well on the way to providing safe drinking water to people all across the country. That's under the Jal Jeevan mission. Why then can't we provide clean air? Air to breathe. The most basic of human necessities, air. Honestly, I don't know. I don't know why it isn't higher on the list of national priorities. And there could be some reasons. Reason number one, perhaps this is because it's considered a Delhi problem. Just Delhi and the NCR suffer, and that's bad, but that's 30 to 40 million people, so it's not that big a deal. But actually, that's not true. If you look at the extent of the toxic air that descends every year, it actually spans right across the Indo-Gangetic plain. So it's not just Delhi, it's also Haryana, it's Uttar Pradesh, even Bihar, parts of Punjab, maybe even West Bengal, parts of Madhya Pradesh. We are not talking about 30 to 40 million people suffering. We are potentially talking about 300 to 400 million people who are facing the prospects of short-term and long-term damage to their health. So then, why are we so apathetic about it? Why don't we fix it? Reason number two, perhaps we don't know how to fix it. Perhaps it's just such a big problem and so many political difficulties that it cannot be fixed. Again, that's not true. Multiple studies have been done. Expert panels have submitted their recommendations to the National Green Tribunal. The Supreme Court has got involved. We know what is doing it. We know some of the worst offenders, and we know what can be done to minimize the damage. We know the culprits: stubble burning, industrial emission, biomass burning in the winters, dust in XYZ reasons. We know what the problem is, and we know what can be done. We also know that this is something that happens every year like clockwork in November, December, and January. And we know why. Wind patterns change. The mixing layer is affected. Any pollutants at all that are released into the air in North India at this time just hang there for weeks altogether because there's no wind to blow them away. Now, you know all of this. I'm not going to repeat this list. You probably know all of this by heart already. If you want, at some point I'll go over it. But we know what needs to be done and what should be done. So why aren't we doing it? Reason number three for the apathy and the inertia. perhaps people don't genuinely believe that this air pollution will actually harm them. And you know something? I have heard this. I've heard this from many people. I've heard this from people across the spectrum, people on the roads, at telas, not worrying about the air pollution. I've heard it from people in fancy outside restaurants having their dinner and drinks in the open air and saying, hey, isn't the weather so nice at this time in Delhi? Nothing will happen. Ye to hota hai. Air pollution is not a big deal. It's all just a media creation to scare us. Well, let's address that reason 3 now by getting in some medical advice. Let's try to show you actually it does matter. And for more on that, we're now being joined by Dr. Vikram Chandra, who's the Chief of Pulmonology from the Max Healthcare Hospital in New Delhi, one of the top pulmonologists in India. So if you don't want to listen to what I'm saying, at least listen to him. You know, Dr. Chandra, I keep showing up in programs like this year after year, and it's not just an air pollution season. I quite often start saying this, you know, September onwards, June onwards, it is going to happen again. People don't seem to believe what damage it is. Okay, let me just start off by asking you, now that I have you, let me just ask you for some medical advice. I'm coughing, my voice is hoarse, I'm feeling congestion, my sinuses are congested. Am I sick, Dr. Chandra? Or am I suffering from a severe case of Delhi, of air pollution, of NCR? And are there lots of people in North India facing the same thing?
Thank you, Vikram. Thank you for having me on your show. I think what you're describing is classically what we're seeing these days. And believe me, nearly 30 to 40% of the patients that we see in the OPD walking in these days are with these kind of symptoms. And I think this is because of nothing else but the air pollution that we all are getting exposed to. Air pollution has 2 kinds of impacts on our health. One is a short-term impact and the other is a long-term impact. But overall, what we need to understand is that WHO also has listed it as the most hazardous environmental risk factor on our health. It resulted in about some 1.7 million deaths in 2019. And if you see some in India alone, and if you see one of the latest studies which has shown that people living in Delhi NCR, their lifespan has been reduced by almost 11.9 years because of the air that we've been breathing for the last so many years. And, you know, it may just be a rough estimate, but it won't be wrong to say that over the years, we only see the situation worsening than improving.
Okay, Dr. Chandra, I'm going to come to the short-term and the long-term health impacts in just a couple of minutes. But, you know, I've often wondered why people don't get more worried and exercised about this. Is it perhaps that it's only seen as a Delhi problem? This is a problem that happens in Delhi every winter, but the rest of us are fine. But actually, if you look at the data, it's not just Delhi. It's all across North India. It's across the Indo-Gangetic Plain. Is that what you're hearing from other doctors? That the symptoms you see in Delhi and in the NCR are also being repeated in other cities across Uttar Pradesh and Bihar and potentially Haryana?
Absolutely. It's the entire Indo-Gangetic belt that is getting affected. In fact, there was a study I remember reading a few years back which showed that 16 out of the top 20 most polluted cities in the world are in India only. And these are exactly the cities that you've just named, some of them. But in fact, now I hear that even in Mumbai, the AQI levels are quite high. In cities like Pune, the AQI levels are pretty high. So I think it's becoming more of a national issue now, which we need to address at a national level.
Yeah, but you know, when you talk to anybody in North India hearing about Mumbai complaining about 135, 150, you say, well, you know, here it's 300, 400 for weeks altogether. Let's now turn to the health impacts, because I think people need to understand this. They need to understand what this is doing to you. So let's start off with the short-term issues that people are facing. And as you were saying, there's sort of a difficulty in breathing, congestion, sinus problems. That's a short-term stuff, right? And then does it go away, or does it leave some lasting impact as well?
Absolutely. So in short term, most of the people would be coming to us with complaints of cough, cold, stuffy nose, pain here, headache, watering from the eyes, sore throat, or a foreign body sensation in the throat, wheezing in the chest. These are the classical symptoms that they would experience on a short-term basis, which of course would get relieved with medication. but not so easily and not without leaving any permanent damage inside the lungs. Usually now what we're seeing is most of the patients are developing a protracted course. They are requiring antibiotics. Antibiotics are given more out of fear that there may be a secondary infection, or they're getting secondarily infected and then having to take the antibiotics. And steroids, because sometimes the congestion in the lungs is so much, or the symptoms are so severe that they're just not coming under control with the routine decongestants and the other medication and the supportive things like steam and all. So one is that, but every time somebody has an acute episode like this, which is involving the lungs, it would leave behind some residual damage, which may not heal ever in life. How much percentage is very difficult.
Wait, if I could just pause you for a second before you come to the long-term impact. You just said something which is quite alarming. You're saying even when you're having the short-term impact of air pollution or this coughing and this wheezing, you may say, oh, it's fine, it'll go away, I'll recover from this in a couple of days. You're saying that this could actually be leaving a permanent scar in your lungs, which will therefore be with you for the rest of your life. And that is something, therefore, that you need to keep in mind when you're spending 30 to 60 days actually breathing the poison.
Absolutely. So it's not just the cough and cold. The cough and cold may not leave as much of an impact, but once it goes into the lungs and results in wheezing in the chest. So wheezing basically represents the narrowing of the airways. Our airways are like tubes. So once they get narrowed, there are two components to it. One is because of the inflammation inside the mucosa, and the other is because of the muscles going into a state of spasm. So every time that happens, the spasm in the muscles may not come back to its full normal state every time. It may just leave back some damage. Also, if there's the alveoli, that is the air sacs, if they also get involved, then they would also leave some damage in the air sacs. Plus, it's an inflammatory cascade that gets triggered off inside the air sacs, inside the blood system. This inflammatory cascade is no longer restricted only to the lungs, and it circulates to other parts of the body as well, and can even result in acute heart attacks, even in the short-term basis.
So that's where the other aspects of this start to kick in, right? It's not just your lungs. You then start getting into the territory where you can have heart attacks, you can start having strokes, things which you don't necessarily associate directly with air pollution. If you're having coughing or wheezing, you'll say, yes, this is air pollution, but you don't necessarily associate it with a stroke or heart attacks or even the premature deliveries of babies. And science now seems to be showing that even that can be linked to air pollution. Why is that?
Yeah, Vikram, absolutely, you're right. And the main reason why we can't link them directly is because there is no one single test which you do and you say, okay, this is because of air pollution. But certainly the studies over the years have shown beyond doubt that the impact because of the air pollution goes beyond the lungs. In the lungs itself, as I mentioned, asthma, COPD, infections like tuberculosis, pneumonia, interstitial lung diseases, hypersensitivity pneumonitis, all these things happen in adults. One other thing that we're noticing now is lung cancer becoming very common in non-smokers. See, classically, lung cancer has been labeled as a smoker's disease or a smoker's cancer. But now we're seeing a lot of them in young ladies who've never ever smoked in life. But it's just the exposure to the air pollution probably that is causing this. So lung cancer, then premature deaths, as you rightly said. These are all the impacts that you would have in the lungs of an adult. In children, and even before the child is born, even in them, the impact could be huge. There could be a premature birth, there could be poor development of the lungs, poor immune system of the lungs. And as a child as a child grows, then they start developing allergies, the respiratory tract infections. In fact, there's studies which have linked the air pollution with mental retardation and certain kind of, cognitive disorders in children as well.
Right, Dr. Nangia, the fact that we've now had a situation where in this entire part of northern India, it's been 20 to 25 days now of 350 plus AQI, 24 hours a day. That's what the people are breathing 24 hours a day. Would this have been considered a health emergency in just any other place in the world, 350, 400? It's just that people here seem to get used to it. People are going for walks, they're having lunches outside, they're saying, oh, isn't Delhi lovely in this weather? Same things are being reported from other parts of northern India. Anywhere else, would this be considered a dire health emergency?
Yeah, definitely. It is a health emergency. It is just that we are not realizing it. we think that, it is, so WHO also labeled it as a silent killer, silent invisible killer. But unfortunately, we're seeing it all around us now, yet we're not realizing how badly it is impacting our health.
All right, Dr. Nangia, that's a rather gloomy prognosis, but thank you so much for what you said. And by the way, if you're watching this, do remember to share this. Do remember to share that piece of information with as many people as you can. In the hope that finally we will wake up and do something about it. It's probably too late this year. No solutions will be found this year. But if we really get activated, maybe we'll be able to find a solution next year. And the second reason why you should be sharing this particular report and what Dr. Nangia just said is because if somebody is actually living in these regions right now and are wanting to roam around outside, do take precautions. Wear that mask. Try and keep the pollution down. If you can afford it, have an air purifier in your house. If you can't, try and find other ways of protecting yourself to the maximum extent you can. This air pollution is not good for you. And you just heard the reason why. All right, let's now move on to something else. A big story emerging. Indian students could soon get degrees from top foreign universities right here at home, in campuses from leading foreign universities that have been set up right here in India. Yes, that's right. They don't have to go to America or Canada or UK or Australia or any of those other places. They can get those degrees once foreign universities set up campus here. Now, the UGC has recently announced regulations for global universities to set up and operate campuses in India. These regulations are in line with the National Education Policy 2020, and they aim to increase the quality and add a global dimension to higher education in India. Well, for more on this, we're now being joined by UGC Chairman, Professor M. Jagdish Kumar. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us. We'd spoken a few months ago and you'd said why this is so important. Number one, all that foreign exchange that Indian students are spending, going abroad, that can be saved. You'll get good, high quality, higher education right here in India, supplementing what we've already got. Plus, of course, research possibilities open up. So we know why you're doing this. Tell us the guidelines that you've just suggested. Is that an important step in operationalizing all of this?
So, Vikram, first of all, these are regulations, and these have been announced as a Gazette notification by Government of India. And the basic idea of these regulations is to facilitate the foreign higher educational institutions to set up campuses in India, across India, anywhere, wherever they wish to establish these campuses, with the aim of providing high quality education at the undergraduate, postgraduate, and doctorate levels. And the institutions can choose their own faculty members using the same parameters that they use in their main campus. They can adopt their own admission policies and decide the academic programs that they wish to offer in these campuses.
So if I can just understand what you're doing right now and what people have understood so far, how much flexibility will the foreign universities have? If you're Harvard or Johns Hopkins or Oxford, you can now just come, set up a campus in India, run it whichever way you want to, teach whatever you want to, get the faculty that you want, and also charge the fees that you want to charge. Is that what is now being permitted?
To make this a possibility, we have given autonomy to these institutions to decide on various parameters, such as the admission policy, faculty recruitment, and the academic programs that they wish to give, and so on, so that we will be in a position to attract some of the best universities to come to India. And already we are in discussion with several groups who have visited UGC and expressed their desire to set up the campuses here. And I'm very positively inclined to say that in the coming 1 or 2 years, we will see campuses of the foreign higher educational institutions offering their academic programs in India.
Now, obviously, the big advantage of this from the Indian point of view is that whatever people are paying eventually as fees to the universities, Aid could be lower because the costs of running operations in India may be lower. Fees should also potentially be lower. But also from an Indian point of view, we're right now sending, 400,000, 500,000, maybe even 1 million students abroad every year. Now, many of them can stay on, and that's very valuable foreign exchange that we'll be saving.
Vikram, right from the beginning, we have been saying that this is another window that we are providing to the students to access high quality international education by staying within India. But the number of students who wish to go abroad will continue to rise because we have too many students in our school system. Currently, 26 crore students are there. And with our aim to double our GER in the coming years, the number of students who aspire to access high quality higher education will increase. So therefore, those who can afford to go abroad, they will continue to go. But those who wish to stay in India, and here two categories of students. One, they have the financial means to go, but they wish to stay in India. And the other category is they do not have the financial means to go abroad, and they will also come here.
Well, Professor Kumar, a couple of questions have, of course, arisen. Some of the universities, for example, feeling that, do we have to set up a campus entirely on our own? We prefer to partner with people out there. So what are the rules and regulations around that? Some of the people are nervous about red tape and bureaucracy in India. So will you be able to convince them that maybe there can be some sort of a single window system which does not make it too onerous for them to come?
Two things here. One, UGC would like to be a single window to provide all kinds of assistance to these foreign universities. And two, the foreign universities can also establish these campuses as a joint venture. They can partner with an educational institution in India, or they can partner with a company. But in either case, our regulations say that the majority holding should be that of the foreign higher educational institution.
All right, Professor Jagdish Kumar, thank you so much, sir, for joining us, and looking forward to seeing how the implementation of this actually rolls out. Thanks a lot for being with us. Well, clearly it's a big new policy that's come, and it's creating a certain amount of excitement, not just in India, but across the world in many foreign universities. Big question now, how can it actually be implemented on the ground? There have been great policies in the past, especially in this field, that didn't actually go anywhere. Will it be different this time around? For more on that, we have with us Mr. S.S. Mantha, Chairman of the AICTE, and also Ashok Thakur, former Secretary of the Ministry of Human Resource Development. Thank you both so much for being with us. Mr. Thakur, why don't I start with you first? The implementation of this policy, how feasible, how easy do you think it will be?
Vikram, this is definitely a desirable regulation. But as far as practicality is concerned, there are a few question marks, which I think we all should know. Number one is that they have a stipulation that the foreign university will set up its own campus within the boundaries of the country. So, which requires a huge amount of investment. I think that is going to be a practical challenge. No university, foreign university, even the best ones, they're not going to rush into it this year, especially when our investment in research is so low. India's research, investment in research is just 0.8% of our GDP, whereas in China is 2.5 and more. So therefore, unless the best faculty will only come here when we give them good opportunity for research. So that is one of the major issues, I think. And second thing is the legal aspect, because education in India is not for profit. There are several Supreme Court orders and pronouncements which say that education is not for profit. So going around that part is going to be a legal challenge too.
All right, Dr. Mantha, your reaction to this policy, what do you think will be required to make it successful?
I mean, the first is creating an ecosystem where the foreign institutions would really want to come and set base here. Now, the fundamentally what has happened is a lot of areas in emerging research and emerging technology are required here, where the local institutions may not be able to invest all those kind of investments that are required. But then for a foreign university to come in with niche programs could be a possibility. But then for them to set up their own infrastructure, their own establishment, like Thakurji said, it becomes a little difficult. But then within the regulations, if you read the regulations carefully, there is a lot of it unsaid than what is said there. One of the points is they have said the foreign universities need to have their own campus, and they need to set up a campus and so on. But before that, they also talk about joint venture. So as far as joint venture is concerned, probably a campus within the existing universities is a possibility. I mean, which is not outright, rejected within the regulations. So that is one possibility. The second possibility is the regulation is also silent as to what kind of infrastructure and in what form it needs to be set up.
So let me just take that point forward, because the regulations also say that you have to get a faculty which is as good as the faculty that you've got abroad. But if you're going to try and get the top professors to come and say, don't work in Silicon Valley, don't work in Boston, don't work in New York, don't work in London, come to India instead, work here, it means the salaries will have to be competitive, the research opportunities will have to be competitive, and also the living conditions will have to be, well, improved certainly compared to what they are right now.
Absolutely, Vikram. I think without catering or looking in depth in a realistic way, I think it's going to be a big issue, because the top faculty will only come. For example, the only country with whom India should be comparing itself is China. When we visited the universities in China, wow, they have created such good facilities for the faculty people. And like I said, there's most of them, the top ones, come to the Chinese university because they give you huge research grants, which ours doesn't seem to be we are stuck at 0.8% of our GDP. We need to break that ceiling and offer them good amount of not only research money, like you said, you need to give them good living conditions, which I think we have still many years to go, I think.
Dr. Mantha, your take on that? Because clearly it's not just about giving undergraduate degrees to Indians, it's also about getting access to the latest technology and some of the finest brains. And for that, you've got to incentivize that research and that technology being developed right here in India.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a most important point. If a faculty would come to a institution in the country, only if he probably is, getting a good salary, probably something that is as comparable to what he would otherwise get in his own country. The second is the connect with the industry and participating in the kind of collaborative research between the university and the industry, and the possibility of creating new products, processes, and then creating patents out of that, which adds to his resume, his repertoire, and so on, his CV and things like that. And participation in research, publishing in papers, even if it is a joint publication, you need the right kind of person and the right kind of research, the facilities that are required to do that.
All right, Dr. Mantha, Mr. Thakur, thank you so much for joining us with that perspective. All right, let's move on now to our regular segment. What is the international press saying about India? And not surprisingly, there were a fair amount of headlines this week about that one subject you haven't heard me talking about yet, which was, of course, that loss by India to Australia in the Men's Cricket World Cup final. Well, very touchy subject. I'm not going to talk about that too much, but it was featuring in the press all around the world, including, for example, in the New York Times, which did refer to that particular loss as being a bitter setback for the country, which was hoping for a third World Cup win. And it spoke about why cricket is so popular and why it holds such economic significance in India. Reuters spoke about the Indian stock market and said that the Indian stock market is expected to reach new highs in the next 6 months with a 10% rise by the end of 2024. That's according to a Reuters poll. This growth has been attributed to rising Indian young investors, better financial literacy, and also increased access to financial services. India, of course, the economy is among the fastest growing and is expected to grow more than 6%. So that will have its own impact on the stock market, the survey said. And India is intensifying efforts to facilitate Tesla's investment in the country, aiming to secure necessary approvals by January 2024. That featured in multiple publications. The Arabian Post, for example, said that the Prime Minister's office has recently conducted discussions emphasizing an expedited approval process. Talks also include considerations for lower import duty on fully assembled electric cars, at least until it starts to be developed and produced right here in India. Another moment you've been waiting for. He's the guy you've probably seen somewhere as a VJ on TV, in films, on the stage, or on an OTT show. From introducing stand-up comedy to the Indian middle class and inspiring the young generation to dreams of taking up comedy as a career, to creating history this week. Well, I can't say he's finally landed because Vir Das has been around for a while, keeping it funny and real for his audience, be it in India or abroad. This week, though, Vir Das bagged the first Emmy for India for his Netflix stand-up special, Vir Das Landing. And in his own words, it's the first award for India in comedy, but not the last. And we've got the man himself with us. Vir Das, such a pleasure talking to you. And let me start by saying big congratulations from all of us.
Thank you so much, sir. It's very good to see you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, Vir, so let's start with the Emmy. Now, you have been nominated once before, so this time, were you nervous? Were you biting your fingers? Were you fairly confident you would get it?
I wasn't nervous at all because I didn't think I had any shot of winning. I'd been there once before, and it's an interesting category because it lets a smaller show like myself punch above its weight. So because they consider laughter to be laughter, I'm nominated with Dairy Girls. I'm nominated with massive fictional productions that take 100 people to make and cost way more money than my show costs. I'm just a guy sitting on a stool and maybe 8 people worked on my show. So I'd been there before and I wouldn't say I lost, but Call My Agent, which was a massive global show at that time, had won. And then this year I was nominated with something called Dairy Girls, which is just as equally...
All right, so we're interrupting that broadcast for some breaking developments that have just happened in the last few minutes. And this is in relation with the deal for the exchange of captives for the Palestinian prisoners. And at this moment, what we are getting, the information that we are getting is that about 12 Thai nationals who have been captured by Hamas on the 7th of October, they have been allowed to walk free. And this is something that's been confirmed by no less an individual than the Prime Minister of Thailand. And apart from this, there are also 13 Israeli captives who also are expected to be released. This is what is happening at this moment. These are live images from near the Rafah border crossing. And according to the information that is, of course, coming in, the 12 Thai nationals have been handed over to the Red Cross. They've been allowed to walk free. This is in the interim. These are also the trucks laden with aid which are making their way into the Gaza Strip from the Rafah border crossing. This is what is unfolding at this moment. Now remember, it is for the first time in 49 days that there has been a humanitarian pause of this nature. This is not a ceasefire as people normally understand it to be. This is more in the nature of a humanitarian pause where there has been an agreement between Hamas and the Israelis for the exchange of Israeli captives who have been captured by the Hamas fighters on the 7th of October. And there are about 150 Palestinians. Most of them are young minors, not even 18 years old, who are expected to be released today. 39 of them are expected to be released. there is still no information on that. But what we are getting at this moment, what can be confirmed, is that about 12 Thai nationals, they have been allowed to walk free. The release of the 12 Thai nationals was not a part of the deal. This is something that Hamas has done because of the mediation efforts by Qatar, Egypt, the United States and even Thailand. There were about 23 Thai nationals being captured by the Hamas fighters on the 7th of October. These Thai nationals were said to be agricultural laborers who were working. They did not have anything to do with the politics in the region. They were there essentially to earn their living, and therefore they're being allowed to go on a humanitarian basis. The Thai Prime Minister has said 12 Thai nationals who were in the custody of Hamas have now been handed over to the Red Cross, and they are being taken from the Gaza territory through the Rafah border crossing into Egypt, from where they'll of course be airlifted. But now the crucial bit of the agreement, part of the agreement that of course has to happen, is the release of the Palestinian prisoners who've been languishing in Israeli prisons, and the 13 Israeli captives who are expected to be handed over. These are live images that we're getting from the Rafah border crossing. Meanwhile, this is how the families of the Israeli hostages are, of course, awaiting for the return of their family members. Remember, they have been out on the streets. They've been demanding accountability from their government. They have lambasted their government, saying that the Netanyahu government has simply not done enough in securing the release of the hostages. And also remember, there are reports within the Israeli media which say that the Netanyahu government had this deal before. It rejected it, but then eventually buckled under pressure and agreed to the very deal that could have gotten the Israeli hostages freed at least a week or a fortnight ago. But what we are witnessing at this moment is perhaps the first glimmer of hope that this conflict could get a resolution. Because as things stand at this moment, what has been set out is that there will be a humanitarian pause for a period of 4 days, which could be extended in exchange for 10 prisoners for every day of a humanitarian pause, where Israel ceases to go after the residents in the Gaza Strip. Now, all of these are details that are emerging at this moment. Remember, things are extremely tentative, and all of this is, of course, from information that has come in from the Israeli media that is, of course, reporting some of the stuff, but the Israeli media has no access inside the Gaza Strip, and the information, of course, is coming in from members of the Red Cross, where 12 Thai nationals, we're given to understand, have now been handed over to the Red Cross, and they are now being taken across the border through the Rafah border crossing into Egypt, from where they'll be airlifted out of the country. And this is not a part of the hostage exchange deal. The Thai nationals have been released on humanitarian grounds because they've got nothing to do with the politics. Now, what were these Thai nationals doing in southern part of Israel? There were total 23 Thai nationals who had been captured by the Hamas fighters on the 7th of October. Now, these Thai nationals are said to be menial agricultural workers who were there to earn their living, and they'd been captured on the 7th of October when the Hamas fighters had stormed into the southern part of Israel, and therefore Hamas has allowed them to walk free. Not part of the deal that's been signed, but this is separate from the deal that has in fact been agreed upon to release Israeli captives in exchange for Palestinian prisoners who are languishing in Israeli prisons. Most of these Palestinians who are expected to be released are women and young children. Many of them are less than the age of 18. So this is what we expect to happen in the course of the next few minutes. Remember, the exchange of captives for the Palestinian prisoners should have happened at 4 p.m. and the local time in Gaza at this moment is 4:44 p.m. It is 44 minutes past the agreed upon time. But what has happened so far is that 12 Thai nationals have been allowed to walk free. They've been handed over to the officials of the Red Cross, and they're now being driven out from the Gaza territory through the Rafah border crossing into Egypt, from where they'll be airlifted out of the territory. So these are live images as light begins to fail at the Rafah border crossing. Remember, this, of course, is an extremely tense moment. A lot can go wrong, despite the fact that this is a deal that has been agreed upon. There's a 4-day humanitarian pause. There are also trucks which are bringing in humanitarian aid, which have also begun to move in. And this is what is happening at this moment with respect to the exchange of the Israeli captives who are in the custody of Hamas for the Palestinian prisoners who, of course, have been languishing in Israeli prisons. You can, of course, look at the members of the media there waiting for more information. And at this point of time, I'm told that we have Mr. Omar Barghouti, who's, of course, joining us live. Mr. Barghouti is a prominent Palestinian human rights activist, and he's joining us on this broadcast on WION. Mr. Barghouti, what we are witnessing, perhaps it's still not happened, and it's still a pretty tenuous situation. But what can be confirmed at this point of time is that 12 Thai nationals have been allowed to walk free by Hamas. Now, this is not a part of the deal in exchange for captives for the Palestinian prisoners, but they've been allowed to walk free on a humanitarian basis. Tell us, how crucial is this moment in bringing an end to this conflict?
Well, this 4-day respite, this 4-day humanitarian truce is important for our people in Gaza. 2.3 million Palestinians have been subjected for 50 days to Israel's genocidal war, armed, funded, and enabled by the United States, the EU, the UK, Canada, and others. So it's extremely important, after all the massive destruction, denial of food, water, fuel, and medicine, destruction of hospitals, schools, universities, and infrastructure. It is very important for our people to have this respite, to have a breather. But this will not bring about justice, obviously. This is a first step. We need to keep pushing to achieve a permanent ceasefire. And then after that, we'll have to hold Israel accountable for every single crime it has committed for 50 days in this genocidal war on our people.
Now, at this point of time, we are looking at these images. These are from the Rafah border crossing. Now, as a part of this deal, Israel has agreed to release about 150 Palestinians. Most of them are women and children, less than the age of 18, who've been languishing in Israeli prisons. But what is also important to highlight at this point of time is before the beginning of this conflict, before the 7th of October, there were more than 5,000 Palestinians who were languishing in Israeli prisons. And since the 7th of October, Israel has gone on and arrested more than 3,000 Palestinians. So in total, at this point of time, according to estimates, more than 8,000 Palestinian prisoners are in Israeli prisons. So how serious is Israel about releasing some of these Palestinian prisoners who've been languishing in Israeli prisons, and many of them happen to be young children?
It's absolutely not serious. Israel has been forced, and the US has been forced to accept even this 4-day truce because of mounting international pressure and because Israel has not achieved its military objectives on the ground. So failure on the ground and massive international solidarity pressure. We've seen enormous demonstrations from Jakarta to Kerala, from Morocco to Iraq, in the United States, in London, Cape Town, across the world. We've seen massive demonstrations that have shown the United States and Israel and their European allies that most of humanity does not accept this televised genocide. Indeed, as you've said, Israel has kept thousands of Palestinian prisoners and is every day arresting arbitrarily women, children, young men for absolutely no charge whatsoever. So this arbitrary arrest, which is taking people hostage, basically. So this double standard of calling Israel's captives, civilian captives, as hostages, which they are, and they should be released, yet ignoring the thousands of Palestinian civilians held without charge by Israel or with flimsy charges by Israel, as international human rights organizations have always documented. My point is, Israel and its US and European allies will not give up anything without pressure. We've done a lot of pressure so far. We need to do even much more to stop this genocide.
Right, and at this point of time, we're also talking a bit about the humanitarian aid that is being allowed to now enter into the Gaza Strip. According to reports, there'll be about 200 trucks filled with aid, which is food, medicines and supplies for the people in Gaza, which will be allowed to enter A lot of people are saying that this is nothing more than a drop in the ocean. Give us a sense of what the situation is like in the Gaza Strip, which has been under a blockade and a siege for 49 long days.
Well, let's just take even Oxfam, not exactly a very radical organization, has said Israel is using starvation as a weapon of war. And that's an exact quote. Israel is thirsting and starving 2.3 million people for 50 days and not providing fuel to do water desalination and to do proper sewage treatment and so on. So Israel is intentionally causing disease, causing starvation and thirst among 2.3 million. In fact, a senior Israeli general just 2 days ago said, in fact, the spread of epidemics would be very welcome because it will bring about Israel's victory. Imagine this fascist tendency prevailing in Israeli society today across the board, from the top leadership, military, political, media, cultural, academic leadership, to the simplest person in the street, repeating the same genocidal language, dehumanizing Palestinians. So absolutely, you are right. This will continue, this dehumanization and this blockade will continue. Those 200 trucks are less than 40% of the daily trucks needed to enter Gaza to satisfy the minimum requirements of 2.3 million Palestinians. So indeed, it's not enough. After 50 days of starving the population, denying hospitals even the basic medical supplies and even oxygen for incubators. Some Palestinian babies in incubators died because of lack of oxygen. This is murder. This is not just a dying of natural reasons.
Now, at this point of time, Mr. Barghouti, there are reports that some Palestinians, because they saw that this humanitarian pause was in place since this morning, they tried to make their way back into northern Gaza where their homes are situated. And according to what has been reported within the Israeli media itself, at least about 2 Palestinians have been shot dead, while 11 others are said to be injured because they were just trying to go back to their homes in northern Gaza. What does this mean for the Palestinian people who have been driven out from their homes in the northern part of Gaza?
In fact, the reports we're seeing is tens of thousands of Palestinians are marching back north. Imagine just the will of those people, our people in Gaza. It's just amazing. After this devastating genocide, they're marching back to check their homes and neighborhoods, to check on their dead ones that they couldn't find any news about. So people have basic human needs that they're trying to satisfy. And indeed, Israel has violated the truce by shooting at some of those Palestinians, committing yet more crimes. But it's allowed to do so by a complicit United States administration, by complicit European, Canadian, Australian governments. They're part and parcel of this genocide. They are partners in crime, no less. And every single Palestinian death, every single home destroyed is also on their hands, not just perpetrated by Israel.
Absolutely, indeed. Mr. Barghouti, thank you very much indeed for joining us on this broadcast here on WION and getting us that perspective there. These are live images that are being beamed out from the Rafah border crossing. At this point of time, what is confirmed is that 12 Thai nationals have been allowed to walk free. And also, according to reports that are emerging within the Israeli media, 13 of the Israeli nationals who were supposed to be set free have been set free. And our correspondent Jody Cohen is in fact joining us live with more information on this. Jody, what is it that you're picking up at your end? Because these are crucial moments. The hostages had to be set free at about 4 p.m. It's well past 4:45 now local time there. Have the Israeli hostages now been set free by Hamas?
Hi, Mohammed. So yes, as you said, this whole process has been delayed. We did hear shortly after 4 o'clock local time, which was the time that the Israeli hostages were supposed to be released. We heard that the Thai Prime Minister said that 12 Thai hostages out of the 36, I believe, Thai hostages who are being held by Hamas in Gaza, they have been released, and the Thai embassy staff are on their way to go and pick them up. And then the latest, we're hearing that the 13 Israeli hostages that were due to be released at 4 o'clock, it's now almost 5 o'clock, they are reportedly now in the hands of the Red Cross. They will be going towards the Rafah crossing into Egypt. Then they will be transported to hospitals in southern Israel. The priority will be to have a look. Nothing is known about their medical condition whatsoever. They haven't been visited by the Red Cross at all in these 49 days. So the priority will be to find out what their medical condition is like. They'll be speaking with